Welcome to the Innovative Pedagogy Podcast, where we inquire with the greatest minds in academia, where innovation, creativity, and authenticity meet the best teaching and learning practices for educators all over the world. Most importantly, hoping all those we come in touch with leave inspired and ready to change their world. Here's our host, Chris Garcia.
Welcome to the Innovative Pedagogy Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Garcia. I am thrilled to introduce our special guest, Max Tompkins, a well-known esports commentator and analyst with over 5 years of experience in the industry. Max has a passion for games and the esports scene and has the opportunity to work with some of the leading titles in the industry. In his previous role as a content producer at IGN, Max gained valuable experience creating and producing content for a large and dedicated audience. He is now seeking new opportunities to continue his growth in the esports industry and share his knowledge and insights with others. Max also owns Weirdo Studios, a creative space for those who embrace their quirks and individuality. At KEG Studios, Max and his team specialize in producing video essays that explore the weird and unique aspects of the esports world, from bizarre game mechanics to peculiar player personalities. They always look for an unusual and unexpected. Max believes it's okay to be a little different and aims to create an inclusive space for those who feel overlooked. Hey, Max, welcome to the show. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me on. This is very exciting.
And I just want to give a little background. I had the opportunity of I didn't get a chance to formally meet Max, actually, until a few moments ago. Now, through the correspondence of email, but I had the opportunity of witnessing and seeing Max firsthand do play-by-play for an esports championship at Compton Unified School District back on May 30th. It was the championship, a Rocket League championship between some of the middle schools in that district there. And as someone that is consistently listening to a lot of baseball games and play-by-play announcing and loves the play-by-play announcers from the likes of Bob Costas to John Miller to Joe Buck, I thought, like, wow, Max is doing something very, very unique, especially when it comes to the world of esports, because play-by-play announcing, or what we call in esports shoutcasting, it's a gift, and I'm excited to explore a little bit more about your gifting, Max, here as we spend the next few moments just talking a little bit about this.
Well, thank you for the compliments, first off. I really appreciate you calling it a gift. It's been a long time in progress, and I think that's the first time anyone's ever called it that.
Hey, it truly is. Communication is it's a skill that especially a lot of educators are looking to hone in with a lot of their students, and to see the level of standards that you've created. I think sometimes we don't have that bar of, okay, well, how does effective communication look like? And my personal opinion is, look at newscasters, look at people that are radio hosts, look at individuals that are consistently communicating with the general public and doing it in a clear and concise and precise way. And to be able to do that while you're seeing individuals play a video game, I think that just kicks it up a notch. So it's definitely a gift back. So yeah, embrace that.
Oh, thank you, man.
So let's dive in a little bit here, and I want to just dive into your journey into esports and content creation. So it began several years ago, and if you could do me a favor, could you share with us what sparked your interest in esports and how that journey has led you to just even your current roles and your desire for what you do here with Weirdo Studios and KEG Studios?
Yeah, man. I mean, look, media has always been in my life. I guess when I was a little kid, people would watch TV shows like Ben 10 or whatever. I never really watched a lot of kids shows growing up just because I never had much of an interest. Instead, though, growing up, my parents would give me just the box sets of The Simpsons every year. And so from the very beginning, like if I was done with the season, I would watch all the episodes again with the director's commentaries on. And I just had a huge fascination with like media and production and being like, you know what? This is what I want to get into when I was like 5 or 6 years old. But my whole life was dominated by video games. Whether it's Mario Kart Double Dash on the GameCube, Smash Bros. Melee, or The Simpsons. Just kind of that career has been snowballing, I guess, since I was a very young age of like that direct focus of what I wanted to go into. Now, of course, there's not like a lot of work opportunities in Rhode Island, for that kind of stuff. Though surprisingly, there is some, which as I grew up, I learned was like a possibility. Right near my hometown was actually the house where they filmed The Conjuring, which is pretty cool.
Wow.
Yeah, but to get to your question, what really led me to get into like commentating like this like specific field was there used to be this I'm trying to think of the right word for it. I guess like subscription box of like stuff, right? Do you remember Loot Crate?
I don't actually. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. You don't need to remember it. It kind of phased out really quickly. So it was this subscription box that you could get every month, right? Where they had different themes, and it would just come with like knickknacks and toys or whatever. And Loot Crate was like really popular for like YouTuber sponsorships way back in like 2015. They were one of the first. It wasn't really worth it, to be honest with you. Like you would get the subscription. It was all stuff that you could get at, like Target and like GameStop or like FYE. But what they did have, the only time I ever got value out of that subscription box was a beta code for a game that maybe some people have heard of called Brawlhalla.
Yes, I do know
Yeah.
that.
And so this was 2015. The game had just entered closed beta. You still had to spend $20 to play the game on Steam. Now it's free to play. And like nobody was playing it at all. But I love Smash. I love fighting games at the time. And I'm like, okay, well, it's online, it's accessible, it's free. You know, I'm starting to get a job. I can spend all my money on the skins. Let's get into it. And like after about a year of playing the game, I started getting more into the community and like the tournament side of things. And there was this kid one day after I came home from school who was like, "Hey, you want to play in my tournament?" And I'm like, "No way. I'm too bad at the game to do that." But I had heard like, you know, every so often online, like Smash tournaments and like how there's commentators and people talking over the games. And I'm like, "Oh, that's cool." You know, I like talking. I have a good voice. Like I think I could do that. And so he gave me an opportunity to commentate it back in like I think this is early 2016, 2017. And I was terrible. It was awful.
Really?
Oh yeah, it was so bad. It was like no
Did
one
you
really knew what they were doing.
did you have like butterflies? Did you at least like know the
Oh
key
yeah.
vocabulary that you needed to know? Like, how did
Nope.
that experience go? Wow.
I had zero experience. Didn't do any studying. I knew the game itself, right? But like I treated it like an episode of Ellen. I would be like, "Oh, you know, XYZ user in chat says blah blah blah." And it's like you don't really do that as a caster. It doesn't really provide much. But I mean, it's been a work in progress from there. I know you said it was like a gift. I don't know if I can agree with that just because like it's been literally like a building stepping stone every single time I've done it.
Yeah. No, that actually, I mean, it's you could also look at it, it's like you're cultivating you actually it's like it's it's cultivating a gift, really, if you really want to look at
Yeah.
it that way, maybe. It's something that you felt that you had the confidence and the desire to do, and all of a sudden, okay, let me give this a whirlwind and let me just keep going at it. But it's, I mean, you think about it, you think about the great even athletes that are out there, speaking of like sports in general, they Kobe Bryant, he started his mornings like at 3:30 a.m. and showed up to the court by 4:30 a.m., like 3 or 4 hours before the team had to even be there. And he was,
I've done that.
yeah, so it's one of those things, but it's that desire. And I understand why you might not agree with the word gift, but I definitely know that, like, if that's where your desire started and you moved forward from that and continue to cultivate and practice, that you where you're at now with what I was hearing there at the play-by-play announcing for the Rocket League championship, it was remarkable. I felt like I was listening to the likes of the Bob Costases or the Walter Cronkites, of, articulating themselves out there to the world. So Max, it's you're doing an amazing job, especially considering that you started from Brawl like over 7 years ago.
Thank you. No, I really appreciate that. And like news anchors and stuff, I feel like, you know, someday that's gonna be the next step for me. I really want to do like more on camera stuff. Like my end goal is to be a host and producer, right? Like replace Anderson Cooper type B. I would love to do that. Now, the reason why you said 5 years ago, right, is because I took a break in college. Back when I did the stuff for Brawlhalla in like 2017, 2016, 18, I wasn't getting paid for any of it. So it was just like for fun, just to like, work on my public speaking skills and stuff. But then I was entering college at the time, and I'm like, I'd rather like party. I'd rather like work on school and stuff.
Right.
And I did that. And I wasn't really planning on going back into any of this really. And I was pursuing a degree in film production, just like behind the scenes producing camera operating work, sound booming work, stuff like that. But then my third year of college, some crazy wacky event happened in March 2020 when my TV show production class started, and I was just starting to do on-camera stuff again, and was able to overcome that camera shyness and anxiety, and then
Wow.
it all got taken away from me.
Wow. I mean, that's okay. But you're you had said a lot with saying just the little bit that you said. So first off, when it came to the whole camera anxiety, because right now, like again, I'm going back to where I saw you at the Rocket League tournament. Like, how did you overcome like that? Just the opportunity just to even publicly speak, publicly
Mm.
articulate yourself. I mean, and yeah. So if you don't mind just unpacking that a little bit, how did you get to where you were then to where you're at now?
I think honestly, it took until this year to get over it. I've struggled with anxiety my entire life. I still have anxiety, but because of esports and using it as like a vector for me to improve myself as a person, it's something that I focused on a lot to kind of overcome that demon. And it's taken therapy, it's taken medications. Honestly, the propanolol has been a life changer for me. Ever since I've been on that medication, I haven't really been able to feel anxiety. So it's made things a lot easier and more confidence boosting for myself to be able to do stuff like this without stuttering too much.
Do you find that because you maybe work and your audience is a little bit more, I mean, you could say, as a former middle school administrator, I could say forgiving, but then they forget a lot, but then sometimes they remember. But because you work with a lot more middle schools and high schools in the realm of esports, does that audience kind of change a little bit about it, or is it still just the very fact that you have to publicly speak and articulate yourself in front of people?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a difference. I don't think middle schoolers are really paying attention to what I say too much. I think they just like the louder the better, which
Yeah.
is cool. But the language has to change for like middle schools and high schools too, because they're kids. Like I don't want to insult their play styles or anything. So it's more like it's almost exclusively positive things and like things I'd like to see. Whereas normally with casting, it's kind of a balance of like, this is what a team's doing wrong. This is what I think they should do, and then you add the positives on top of that. So it's definitely like you have to go into it retooling the language and figuring out, okay, I'm severing this like gigantic part of what I do normally.
Mhm.
How do I fill in those gaps with just pure positiveness? And I think that's a major change you have to look into.
No, it's huge, especially when it comes into the world of academia and providing feedback. That right there does require a lot of practice, especially as an adult. Being able to give an elementary, middle school, even high school student feedback requires a almost a sentence frames to be able to provide that effective feedback. But yeah, that's really huge. And I want to kind of go back and revisit a little bit about your role with IGN and then connect that a little bit with esports. So with IGN, you created and produced contents for a variety of large audiences. Can you maybe share with us a little bit about a memorable project or experience you had while working there? And did it shape anything that you're doing right now with even in the world of esports?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna start off by talking about like the origin story of me even getting the job at IGN. It was about a year into me casting full time after COVID started. What happened was I was still in my school, and it was in around like early 2021. I had moved out to my very first place that wasn't like a dorm or my parents' house on my own. And whenever I was able to, like literally whenever I wasn't working on school stuff, which may have been not focusing on school stuff as much as I should have really, I was commentating and just like networking whenever I could. Now, the good thing about COVID, and probably the only singular good thing about the whole thing, is that because there was that 6 feet rule and everything, it made my degree a lot more challenging to actually do on like in-person on-field experience, which made getting graded for my projects was a lot easier. So I didn't have to necessarily do as much project work for my later years of college.
Wow.
So, well, that's great. I was able to focus a lot more just on pure esports stuff. And it was around this time when I was trying to become more studious. I wasn't a kid that would go to after school stuff. I wouldn't do extracurriculars. I'd literally just stay in my room, my dorm room, and play video games all day. And so around this time, I'm like, okay, I'm entering the end of college. I really gotta step it up if I want to have a chance to have a career. And just by chance, I was washing dishes and I got a notification on my phone that we had an after school seminar with a producer from Survivor. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. I'll get ripped. I'll run around with the camera in Survivor and watch the contestants play. I'm down
Wow.
for anything. And so I go into the call. It's on Zoom, and this lady's there, and she's like, a well-known producer. She's cool. But then her husband pops in, and it's Corrado, the lead video coordinator of IGN.
Hmm.
And I'm just like, oh, hold on a second. And so my professor's in the Zoom call too. I'm not listening to what anybody's saying. I am just info dumping, sending every piece of esports work I've ever worked with to my professor. And I'm like, dude, you don't have to know what esports is. Just trust me. Send this to this guy, please. I will be able to get a job with this guy. Realistically, I had no idea if I'd be able to or not, but I figured, why not, right? Shoot my shot.
Yeah.
And yeah, it somehow worked. It just so happened at that time they were building an esports division in IGN, and I was able to be one of the foundational members as somebody like entrenched in that community. And I was in their initial pitch meetings. I was able to help show what formulate what shows we should create for the program. And so I think to answer your question, some of the memorable projects would be actually starting off on those projects, and I think just originally coming up with the concepts. Little 21-year-old me having like that kind of impact, being like, yeah, I think we should focus on these cool stories. Like, what's the history of the Wombo combo from Smash? You know,
Yeah.
how impactful is New York pizza and Smash Bros, right? And like just kind of delving into the world of FPS games. And then just 3 months later, being from some kid in Narragansett, Rhode Island, living in a frozen beach house in the middle of winter, to being my boss being like, "Hey, you want to come to LA?" I'm like, "Sure, why not? I'm down." So like a month later, having an apartment in LA, it's a wild journey.
Wow. That is really cool. And I mean, were you actually preparing yourself to did you do like a CrossFit workout as soon as you found out afterward that the possibilities of joining Survivor was going to be there? Or like how did that go like what was that 15 minutes in your mind like, whoa, Survivor might be an opportunity?
Honestly, I try to think of everything like that as like, whoa, it's a potential thing, right? But no, I didn't do any exercise. I probably should have, but I guess my heart wasn't really into Survivor. I kind of forgot about that as soon as I heard that guy's voice, and I
Yeah.
was just dumping all the esports stuff I could. I'm like, no, if there's a chance, it has to be this.
Wow. And that's really encouraging because the very fact of like looking at an opportunity and presenting just this passion, this idea that you have, and that really actually inspires me a lot with some of the passion projects that I'm working on here at work. But I want to just kind of finish off with this last question and just kind of get your take on this, and that is, so you've been involved with esports for a while, but what have you noticed when it comes to esports and impacting the broader areas of entertainment? I recently even heard the other day during my I listen to I have a very there's a popular sports show that I listen to in the morning here in San Diego, and they made reference to DraftKings, and even one of the things that they mentioned on there was esports. I was the first time I'm hearing now, like, wow, okay, now I guess people can now bet against players and athletes within the world of esports now, just like the way they can do with Shohei Ohtani and like Aaron Judge and Lionel Messi. So the question now I have for you is like looking at how much it's making an impact within broader entertainment, sports industries. Where do you see the future of esports heading to in the next few years?
I think these next few years are going to be critical to seeing where esports goes. The talk about betting, right? It's a tricky subject in esports because, on one hand, there's really no money that's in esports like at all. Most of the money comes from either venture capital or sponsorships, and there was a huge boom of that in 2020 to early 2022 because of COVID and people thinking, everyone's locked inside, everyone's gonna be watching these events, and they were. And then as soon as the restrictions were lifted and everyone started going outside again, all the numbers dwindled, and subsequently the venture capital did too.
Mhm.
That's part of the reason why, myself and the rest of that division at IGM were laid off or switched to new departments was there wasn't money to be found in it whatsoever, and the viewership wasn't necessarily there. Betting can be a really good thing in esports, but there's definitely like a social conscience part to it too that a lot of
Mhm.
people have that normal sports betting does have normal sports does have betting in it, but the problem is though is that the audience for esports caters to be younger people, so you're
Right.
looking at like 13, 14 to like maybe early 30s, whereas sports can be like adult years, right? Like
Right.
18, 20, 40, 50, 60.
Right.
And it's tough, right? Because on one hand, yeah, there's a lot of money in betting. Like that would save the industry. But on the other hand, you might be promoting, 13-year-olds to gamble when they probably shouldn't be
Right.
gambling.
Right.
And it's like, you're damned if you do and damned if you don't, right? So it's like, do you want money in the industry or not? And that speaks into a broader term too, that like even beyond betting, right? It's like, okay, well, you have a service where, unlike sports, you're not paying for pay-per-view. You don't have like these big media contracts with TV show companies or like streaming services. You don't really sell a lot of merch. You know, esports viewers are cheap. I'm cheap too. I don't spend money on watching esports stuff.
Right.
And the accessibility of going to those events is even harder than like say, different a Red Sox game, right?
Mhm.
So where do you get that money? And so the big problem right now that venture capital is gone is that there's three options. Either you have sports betting, you take a complete loss, or you have the Saudi Arabian government help.
Mm.
And there's big controversies with all three of those things, and
And are you
it's
referring to
tough.
the esports city that's being built in Saudi Arabia?
Yes, and the Esports World Cup that's along with it. And
Yeah.
they're pretty much every big influencer or big personality in esports has been very critical about the Esports World Cup. And it sucks, right? Because you're having talent right now take on those opportunities, not necessarily because they want to and want to represent, Saudi Arabian in their quote sports washing, but it's because they offer a lot of money. It's like 2 grand a day. Like it's kind of hard to pass it up in an industry where there's no money and it's getting a lot harder to find a decent day rate to just be able to survive and like pay rent. It's tough. And so the next few years are going to be so critical to see, like, which one of those three pots do we fall into?
Right. Right. And I've seen, and I mean, you're part of it as well, as far as your collaborations with the Compton Unified School District. But I've seen a lot that the whole world of esports, well, the money is right now in limbo and kind of like on a roller coaster. The impact of esports within the middle school and high school arenas is actually growing a lot more because
Yes.
of the culture, of the motivation, of just the aspects of students just desiring to be a part of something. But I do have one more question, and this one's gonna, I want you to answer it and think more of just inspiring either a teacher or that esports shoutcaster that's out there. What advice would you give to a student right now in middle school that is desiring to, maybe they're not an avid gamer, or they don't see themselves as a gamer where they're going to be one of those collegiate esport athletes, but they love video games, they want to be involved in it just like you did, and they want to maybe tap into the opportunities of shoutcasting, play by play? What advice would you give that student to begin building up the resume and also their skill set?
This is gonna be a very loaded question, so I'm sorry if I ramble. To kind of break this down, right? I think high school, middle school esports, and a little bit of collegiate too, is the most pure form of esports, right?
Hmm.
Now, going back to what we were talking about before with the money, right? So I said those three options. There is a secret fourth option that I don't think people realize about funding esports. And that's through middle schools and high schools, where, as far as I'm aware, and you're more entrenched in this space than I am, it is mostly government money. And that's a lot more pure than, say, the other aspects that I was talking about before. And, all these grants and all these degrees and stuff is huge. I
Right.
think using esports and especially the field of commentating is gigantic to be able to teach people how to kind of parse out information, study better, and lastly, be a very good public speaker. I've actually been developing a curriculum myself to teach after school kids for high schools and middle schools to use the lens of esports casting as a way to become a better student and as a way to be a better public speaker, because that's what happened to me. I sucked at studying in school. Like, I'm not gonna lie, man. I was terrible. I
Yeah.
was terrible at studying for esports for a long time too. But it took just brunt force of over and over again to do it, to learn how to be a better student well after my studious years. Like, studying for a game in esports is literally like studying for a college class.
Mm.
The footage, the breakdowns, I literally have to keep a laptop on me full of notes and spreadsheets. I'll show you my spreadsheets later, dude. It's wild. Like, it takes forever for my PC to even load them. To break down every story beat, every statistic that I want to show. Um, but to go into it more, it's gonna be a tough question to answer about the career of commentating. I never thought I would be a full-time caster. I came into it in 2020 myself as just doing this as a hobby, as a way to also build up my studying in public speaking skills, to be able to go into a larger industry like Hollywood stuff. And beyond just esports in of itself and like, my own content creation. It's helped me get a lot more gigs in Hollywood at a younger age. I'm actually working the BET Awards this weekend as a
Wow.
production person, which is huge because I can communicate with, you know, bigger names like, Billie Eilish, Soldier Boy, people like that
Yeah.
to, tell them like, hey, this is what we gotta do. If, this is how I can help you, and this is how I can communicate between them as that bridge for the production people to make sure those shows work really well. But I think expectations are very important too when it comes to people. I wouldn't go into this industry with the expectation that this can be a career. And I do a lot more again than just casting, even though it does pay the majority of the bills. I
Right.
had that understanding that, look, this could stop at any time. I got to make sure I build safety nets elsewhere. I tell my friends that I'm spreading my tendrils and as many facets of the entertainment industry as I can. And I would love to do this as long as humanly possible, but because of how unstable this industry is too, you could do everything perfectly and still just not get any work. And that's just the reality of entertainment. That can happen in any industry too. That's not exclusive to esports. So I think it's important, if you want to go into this industry, to have a backup plan and understand that you're probably going to have to put on many, many, many different hats, which is what esports is great for. You
Yeah.
learn so many condensed skills in one industry that you learn that you don't get anywhere else. Video editing, producing,
Yeah. Yeah.
communication, business, management, dealing with other people, hiring talent, taxes. Like, that's nine
Yeah.
things right there
That's
that
true.
really no other industry will force you to learn in such a small amount of time. And it's really coming into this daunting expectation that it will take over your life. And if it doesn't, you're probably not going to succeed.
Wow. No, I think that's a great way of finishing off, especially when it comes to just the opportunities and the skill sets that just the industry and the skill levels of esports of what it could bring. I think that's also a reality that any career in the entertainment industry, it is a it's in limbo. And I think
Yeah.
because of what happened during the pandemic, And even with streaming services and with the strike that happened last year in
Yeah.
2023, you see that the industry of entertainment is, it's, you hit the nail on the head. It'll be, it's very flashy, it's very attractive, but it's also, be ready to have a lot of multiple ways of being able to go back and have that stable income as well. But yeah, I think that's, you hit the nail on the head when it comes to more of the skill sets. And that dives into a lot of the work that I love to work with students about when it comes to developing their strengths, their interests, and their values, because that's the one thing that you can never take away is someone's characteristics, someone's strengths, their ability to do the different skill sets that they have. I mean, we could probably have another conversation about maybe your producing skills, and when it comes
Podcast
to
too.
there we go. We'll do another podcast where we talk about the production skills and the level of even video editing and what kind of software you like to use, and if you use
Oh, yeah.
OBS or if you use something else for like live streaming and whatnot. So, but yes, we'll go ahead and dive into that in another one when it comes to talking about that. I want to thank all of our listeners for tuning in today, and I hope you really enjoyed today's episode and focus. Max, again, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and insights with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much again for bringing me on. I guess if y'all want to follow me anywhere, it's just Keg Shouts pretty much everywhere online. Yeah, thank you again for this opportunity. I think the future of esports is absolutely within the studious curriculums. It's definitely within middle schoolers, high schoolers, colleges. And at the end of the day, look, if you don't go into casting, if you don't go into esports full time, you end up quitting or whatever, you can take all those condensed skills, bring them to any other industry in the world, and you'll be way ahead of everybody else.
That right there is gold. That is that's gold from an expert that is currently in it right now. And I will also put all of your links and resume on the show notes as well. Hey, all of my fellow educators and district advisors, everyone that's listening in, and you have an esports club or whatnot, and you need a shoutcaster for a tournament or an
Thank
event,
you.
this is your guy here, Max Tompkins. Hey, he's only a few hours north of us here from San Diego, so he's in Los Angeles. So all my West Coast connections, please, all of his communication and contact will be on the show notes as well. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions for future topics, please feel free to send me an email to cbgarcia@sandiego.edu. Also, make sure you follow us on X and on Instagram at Innovative Pedagogy. Also, you can check out my website. I'll put that in the show notes as well if you ever want to get in contact. All right, everyone. Thank you again. And until next time.